She joined as a trainee ABA tutor and worked her way through to being a class leader to a supervisor across both of our schools. And in September 2018, she joined the early years team as an ABA supervisor. She completed her master's through Bangor University in September 2016 and has been qualified as a behaviour analyst since February 2018. She's passionate about helping children with autism succeed and achieve their maximum potential through learning, communication strategies, and gaining access and understanding within their local communities. Sarah loves seeing the progress that the pupils make and celebrating these successes with parents and tutors, and is particularly motivated working with young children and their parents, focusing on early intervention and consistency across all settings from a young age to empower children to grow and succeed. Sarah's talk will go through how the unique model followed at Beyond Autism Early Years Service focuses on empowering parents to make decisions, as well as promoting choice and independence in their children from the beginning. The assessment tools used in the service allow for an emphasis on skills, teaching, promoting learning through play. Working with parents and children at an early age allows a foundation to be set to encourage independence and decision-making as they move through childhood into adolescence and beyond. So the title of Sarah's session is Engage, Communicate and Play, the Early Years Model. Over to you, Sarah.
Hi, everyone. I hope that you've all had the chance to kind of have a comfort break and a bit of snack to get us through to lunchtime. I feel very privileged to be following two great behaviour analysts. So yeah, I'm here to talk about early years and what we do at Beyond Autism. So we'll take a look at early intervention and kind of access to services and what that looks like in the UK at the moment. We'll take a big focus on the importance of parents, as that's something really kind of key and integral to what we're doing at Beyond Autism. And then I'll take a look through various different aspects of the early years model and kind of what the sessions look like, the learning environment, the parent discussion sessions, the assessment tools that we're using, how we've had to adapt those and how we've had to adapt targets, behaviour skills training that we use to focus on with the parents, data taking, data analysis and report writing. And then we'll finish with a summary. And I'll kind of be tying back to the question of obviously whose decision it is whose decision is it anyway throughout. So just beginning, for those of you who don't know about the early years service, so it is kind of completely reliant on voluntary grants and donations. So it's a free service for families to attend, and we're open to families from 15 months up until 5 years of age. It's really important for us that it is free so that parents can access this support at an early age. And you can see from the pie chart that there's kind of a variety of sources of our funding. So early intervention, there's no dispute that early intervention is widely recognised in our field. And I'm sure we could all cite kind of multiple articles from Lovest through to present day, highlighting the importance of early intervention for children with autism, and that if children can access early intervention, then it's likely to contribute to favourable outcomes for them, but also for their families. If we, however, take a look at the current situation in the UK, so the green paper, the SEND Green Paper has just come out that discusses a lot about early intervention. And you can see that early intervention is kind of few and far between. So only 1% of all EHCPs were for children in early years, and only 6.3% of 3 and 4 year olds were able to access early education with SEN. And I think if you look at the amount of children that should have an EHCP or do have SEN needs, then obviously that's going to be a lot bigger than what those percentages represent. The SEN paper, for those of you who have read it, talks a lot about increasing provision within the early years and that being a priority. However, currently, typically that responsibility is often falling on parents, and that early intervention in the UK is generally only kind of available to those that are able to privately fund it. NHS, it's a similar story. So there's some statistics here taken from various sources. Obviously, it varies borough to borough. I know that a lot of the families I work with are Bromley Borough at the moment, and some parent, they all received a letter recently saying that the waiting list for a diagnosis of autism in Bromley at the moment has increased to 18 months to 2 years. And then another family was telling me that they were put on a speech and language therapy waiting list age 2, and at age 4 they have just received their first assessment, but they haven't actually had any kind of form of sessions or intervention from it yet. So yeah, lots of kind of gaps, lots of delays with EHCPs as well. Other families have been told that they can't access NHS SALT until their EHCP comes through. So really big need for kind of getting that early intervention and getting that support to the parents and to the children. So the importance of parents. Obviously, this age, it's non-statutory age, so the family and child dynamic is key. It makes sense to involve parents at this age because those parents are going to be the consistent in their child's life as they move through nursery, as they move through primary school, secondary school, and beyond. Those parents, if we can kind of give them the tools, they're going to be there to help. There's also lots of research that upskilling and empowering the parents can lead to improved outcomes for all. So we'll take a little look at some of that research now. So Strauss et al. Found that parent training and involvement led to a reduction in behaviours that challenge, which is obviously a really, really important outcome. We've also got another study here that was able to find positive outcomes, not only for the children, but also that it reduced parent stress and it increased their feelings of competence. So some great outcomes there for the parents as well. And then I feel like there's a movement around compassionate care in our field at the moment. And there's lots of research around kind of enhancing and making sure there's compassionate care in our relationships with caregivers, and that can result in enhanced outcomes as well. So if we can kind of work compassionately with parents, then this should lead to improved outcomes for both the children and the parents. Thinking about whose decision is it anyway, we want to be promoting the child's voice. We want to be promoting their choices. Obviously, you know, no 2, 3, 4-year-old is going to be in charge of the big life decisions at the moment. But if we can be promoting the little things and also giving parents the tools to take this forward into the future, to encourage that independence as they move through childhood, as they move through adolescence and into adulthood. And then we're kind of wanting to work with parents to be able to spot their child's motivation, to be able to interpret the behaviours that challenge as communication, and focus on skills teaching to enable the child to be able to make their own decisions in the future. So we'll take a little look at what this looks like at Beyond Autism Early Years. So I talked through all this earlier. Let me just click through. I meant to say there's lots of photos throughout of the session and the services. So you can see myself working with a parent and a child there. Okay, so what the sessions look like. We currently have 6 sessions per week. So we operate on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and each of those are 2.25 hours long. One of those is a preschool group format, which is slightly different and is more kind of focused on children who will be going to mainstream school and more group-based learning. So I'll mostly focus on the other 5 sessions, which is our early years model. So currently we have 6 to 8 families per session, and our focus is on teaching through play. Each family attends for 1 to 2 sessions per week for a total of 2 to 3 terms, and that depends on their need and their availability. Usually we find that parents are ready to move on at this point. However, we've had to put a time limit on because we need to ensure that our waiting list doesn't become too big, because then that obviously has that knock-on effect as well. So across the 3 days, we have up to 36 families. And I think typically across a year, we work with around 50 to 70 families. So lots of families able to access the support, which is great. This is the learning environment. So super fun, super bright, looks like a typical early years nursery setting. We've got the main classroom here. You can see a little sensory room bottom left, a physical playroom bottom right, and then we also have a messy playroom and a small outside area. So lots of places for the children and the parents to get involved. So we have myself, we have a speech, language and communication needs teacher, and then we have 3 ABA tutors. So we're the kind of core team that are present every session, and the tutors work with 2 families per session, and the teacher focuses on teaching groups and providing additional support where needed. So the sessions include a combination of free flow, so similar to what they'd be receiving in their nursery, structured individual activities focused around their individual targets, and small group sessions. So the teacher runs attention autism bucket time and sensory story time as well. So the focus is on prioritizing the most socially significant targets, and we'll go through that more in a minute. All the teaching is underpinned by behaviour analysis, and we're really focusing on those strategies that parents can apply consistently in everyday life so that they can have that biggest impact overall. So it's not a drop-off service, much to lots of parents' disappointment. They stay for the whole session and they're encouraged to take an active role. And they typically can be nervous at first, but build lots of confidence as they go through, and the parents really enjoy the kind of hands-on aspect as opposed to just kind of traditional theory training. The individualized targets are created collaboratively with parents and staff. So these are based on outcomes of assessments, but also discussions with parents and really focusing on what's important for them. And it's really important that we have that buy-in from parents, because, we're not going to make significant changes on 2.25 hours a week. But if we can be active, if the parents can be actively applying the strategies across the rest of the week, then that's where we see a huge gains in outcomes. And it's trying to find a model that is different to the kind of traditional gold standard ABA 20 to 40 hours approach. Actually, if the parents can be upskilled, then they're emerging their child in that really kind of key teaching environment consistently. We also have a 30-minute parent discussion session each visit. So the tutors and the teacher stay with the children, and then myself and the parents have a little breakout session. So this is the list of kind of ever-growing topics that we have for the parent discussion session. The topics kind of typically will include a PowerPoint and some resources that are prepared by me. But the parents are also encouraged to share their ideas and their strategies. What we find is that usually in each group, we have a combination of parents who are all at different stages of their journey. So it can be helpful for the parents to provide support to each other and to build up that support network. That's so important for them. The topics, as you can see, we've got a huge range, and there's some that are from the speech, language and communication needs teacher as well. And the topics typically focus on teaching parents kind of a generalizable set of skills that they can apply across a variety of different situations. So rather than giving them the specific sort of handling a specific situation that's happening right now, we can give them the skills and the tools and the knowledge to be able to hopefully take that with them and apply to new situations as their child grows. And I love it when a parent comes in and is like, this happened at the weekend, it was the first time it happened, but I did this, and this because of what we've talked about in the session. So it's kind of giving them the tools and the power and empowering them to be able to make those decisions. We obviously talk about things that might be going on for a family at a time. It's an opportunity for the parents to sit down without their child with a nice cup of tea or coffee and discuss strategies to empower themselves as parents. We found a lot of parents have reported feeling really lonely or really isolated when they start with us. And obviously that lack of support that we discussed earlier, that impacts as well. So this group just allows a bit of time out and for those support networks to be developed so that in the future, hopefully, they're not reliant on us and the professionals. They're building their own support network and building their own skills. So yeah, parents are the main stakeholders. So actually the focus of the session is more on the parents than the children. So as much as we, the children are there and they're very much a focus, it's about empowering the parents to make their own decisions and being confident in making decisions about their children and realizing that, they're the ones with the knowledge. No one knows their child better than they do. We're also setting the foundation with parents to encourage independence and decision-making in their children. So as I said, they're too young right now to make those big decisions, but they can make lots of small decisions. And we can instill things such as choice making, listening to behavior as communication, spotting motivation that the parents can kind of continue with them through. So we will take a little look at the assessment system that we use. The difficulty I had when we were setting up the provision is that the typical assessment tools that you often see in ABA programs or ABA schools are just too lengthy for what we have. We see a child kind of approximately 2.25 hours a week. And during that time, the parents are absent for 30 minutes of that. So tutors spend kind of approximately half the time with each child. And then I obviously have to split my time between 6. So once we've kind of, gone through all of those things, then actually there's not that much time and we'd waste a lot of time completing those assessments. And that would delay the start of intervention. Additionally, we may have 50 to 70 families across the year. So if we are doing full assessments for all of them, then that's going to be very, very time consuming. And a lot of the time we can see it's clear from the outset what the main priorities are from discussing with parents and from, our own observations as well. So we have come up with a simple, concise and efficient way to track children's progress. And we're placing an emphasis on skills teaching. We're promoting learning through play, and we're allowing children to build the skills that they need to make their own decisions in the future. So we're using a combination of concepts that are used typically within ABA programs, but also early year settings. So we've got the early years foundation stage development matters, which is the core curriculum of all early year settings in the UK. The VB map, the ABLES, early start Denver model, essentials for living. We've also got some stages of social development and social communication checklist and stages of play that we're utilising in some of our assessments. So the early start Denver model. So prior to us having a permanent service, which started in 2018, we ran a pilot project and that was with a small number of families. And during those sessions, we used the early start Denver model. And that fitted really well with our ethos of learning through play. It was geared to the right development age group, and it was geared to the right cohort. However, there's 456 skills involved in the assessment tool, so it wasn't necessarily feasible to do with all of our children. Sorry, 1 moment. So we took a look at the VB map, so the Verbal Behaviour Milestones Assessment and Placement Programme, for those of you that aren't aware. And this is one of the most common assessment tools that I use within that age group. So the assessment is split into 0 to 18 months, 18 to 30 months, and 30 to 48 months. So for the ages that we're working with, it's kind of the perfect age group, and it's also designed for children with developmental disabilities or autism. But you can see, so there's 5 different components to the VB map. If we were to do all of them, that would be around 950 skills. If we were just to do the milestones, which is one of the most commonly used parts of the VB map, that would be 170, so it would be a bit more manageable. However, it doesn't allow for kind of any barriers or any behaviours that challenge to be tracked, which where we're working on that those functional skills with parents, those are really key areas. And we all know that if we can try and work on behaviours that challenge when they're younger, when they're a lot more manageable, it's going to be a lot easier for the parents to implement strategies that hopefully can then be taken forward so that those behaviours aren't occurring as they move into adolescence. So I looked at the ABLES next, so the assessment of basic language and learning skills. Again, a commonly used assessment in ABA programs, but 544 skills to assess here. And again, this doesn't look at barriers or behaviours that challenge. So then finally, we looked at the EFL, so the Essential for Living. And this full assessment was ruled out with around 3,000 skills. However, they have a quick assessment, which is just 18 skill areas. And the clue is in the name, so it's quick, which is what we needed. And it's also essentials for living. So it really focuses on those essential and those really functional skills. It is designed as a pre-assessment interview, so it's not designed as a standalone assessment tool. So it's meant to allow practitioners to quickly identify deficits in functional skills and behaviours that challenge. But using a combination of observations, testing, and conversations with parents, it actually seems to make sense as a standalone assessment tool. And it allows us to have that quick and easy visual analysis and that comparison of the child's skills. So, yeah, arguably it is subjective in nature. We're essentially trying to fit everyone into 4 boxes, which is very hard. But we kind of have to make considerations, and we also ensure that regular training, checking of assessment, and inter-observer agreement minimises the impact of this subjectivity. So for those of you who aren't familiar, this is what is included. So these are the 18 different areas that are included within the Essential for Living quick assessment. You often see 8 of these described as the Essential 8. So these are those skills that are going to have the biggest impact on the learner's life. So being able to make requests, being able to wait, accepting removals, being able to make transitions, being able to take turns, accepting being told no, which is a big one that a lot of our learners struggle with, and then things to do with health and safety. So those really key things. But also, if you look at the other areas, matching, imitation, super important skills in early childhood that then can, be pivotal behaviours for the future, and language, problem behaviour, and alternative method of speaking. So there's lots of different things going on. And the benefit is that it focuses on these most functional skill areas, as I've said, And it allows us to focus on these areas with parents so that hopefully we're then leading those children to a life of choice and control in the future. So here is an example. So this is a young boy who started with us when he was 2 years old. So the first assessment is at the bottom. So that is in blue. When he started, you can see he had very limited communication. So he was predominantly pre-verbal. I think he might have said no and car, but apart from that, he didn't have any words. He had a really low tolerance to waiting, a low tolerance to transitioning, being told no. And you can kind of see that across the board, he mostly had 1s or 2s in most areas of the assessment. So the next testing period is 2 months later, and we had started to make some progress using Makaton sign language to communicate. So you can see some increases in the first 3 boxes, which are the ones around communication. Between the second and the third test is when the pandemic hit. And unfortunately, we had to close for the pandemic. And what's great about this is that even though our session stopped, Mum had the skills to continue what she'd learnt at home. And you can see massive jumps between assessment 2 and 3. And in yellow, he's doing lots of great things. So when he returned to us after lockdown, so this was in October 2020, he was communicating verbally, and he had made lots of gains in other areas. And Mum was really confident about the progress that she had made with him. He stayed with us for a few months more. So you can see assessments up until May 2021, where he exited the service, and he mostly had 3s and 4s across the board there, which is fantastic. We're still in contact with Mum, and he's doing really well. And he's just about to start a mainstream reception class in September. So I think the fact that the pandemic hit in the middle of this, whilst for us, obviously that was, that was a barrier. However, it meant that Mum was able to focus on these things and that progress was still being made. Whereas potentially with a more traditional model, if a therapist had been coming in and working directly with the child, the parents may not have had those skills to be able to continue that work at home when it was just that time period where we couldn't do anything or go anywhere. So the perks of the EFL Quick Assessment are that it focuses on skills teaching, it focuses on choice making, building functional communication, teaching alternative behaviours, so things like escape mans. It focuses on tolerating skills and reducing eggshells. However, it is a comprehensive life skills curriculum. It's aimed at children and adults with moderate to severe disabilities. So it's not specifically aimed at young children. So play and social skills are missing from this assessment. And obviously where we are trying to focus on learning through play, play is super important. Play is not only important in early years education. So if you look at the EUFS curriculum, that's all through play. If you look at early years curriculums across the world, typically a lot of them focus on play as well. But there's also research showing that it's important for the parent and child relationship. Looking at the assessments we looked at earlier, so the VB map, the Early Start Denver model, and ABLES all have play and social skills as a component in them. But just taking those parts out of the assessment didn't give us that same quick visual analysis that the EFL assessment did. We looked towards some developmental literature. We looked towards tools used by speech and language therapists and other professionals. And again, a lot of the assessments are long and they're lacking that rapid visual analysis. So what we did find was useful was splitting play and social skills into operationally defined stages. So we actually then created our own quick play and social skills assessment from this. So I'll take you through that now. So Parton, a long time ago in 1932, did a lot of work around social skills. And this is something that's quoted numerous times throughout developmental literature. And it's based on typically developing children, so it's not necessarily ideal, but it's describes children as moving through unoccupied play to solitary play, spectator, onlooker behaviour, parallel play, associate play, and cooperative play. So you can see in the photo, top left, we've got some supported parallel play going on with 2 children from our service. And at the bottom, some lovely independent cooperative play. So in our assessment, we have full operational definitions, but you can roughly see the breakdown of the stages here. So children move from playing by themselves to watching other children, to playing alongside them, beginning to interact with them, and then communicating and working towards a common goal. As I said, these stages are outlined for typically developing children. So it's worth pointing out that a lot of children with autism may often prefer that solitary play. However, we can build skills in other areas, and we've had lots of children who we have seen progress through the other stages, even though solitary play might still be their preferred option. Stages of play. So whilst the 6 stages of social play are quite consistently agreed on, there's actually numerous viewpoints about how play should be broken down, and you can find lots of different literature around different play skills, different numbers of stages, lots of different things. So Ingersoll, who's a BCBA, has done a lot of work on play, and she has some useful breakdowns within her social communication checklist that we chose to do. So I'll take you through that here. We've got what we would call combinatorial play in the bottom left picture, and some pretend play in the right hand picture. So these are the 10 different stages. Again, they're based off of observations of typically developing children, but we'll go through these in more detail in the next slide. So again, we have full operational definitions in the assessment, but typically developing children have been shown to move through exploratory play, so mostly kind of touching, banging, throwing, exploring their environment, to combinatorial play, which is combining objects or stacking or lining them up. Cause and effect play, so things like pop-up toys, musical toys, iPads, anything with a button that has an effect. Functional play, so using common toys appropriately, so things like pushing cars or throwing and catching balls. Moving on to self-directed pretend play, so these would be simple pretend play actions towards themselves. So maybe they pretend to eat some play food, or they're pretending to sleep, or they're pretending they're happy or sad or different emotions. Other directed pretend play comes next. So these would be those same sort of actions, but directed towards another person or another object. So maybe they're feeding their mum, or maybe they're putting a dolly to bed. Symbolic play is pretending one thing represents another. So kind of a classic banana phone type situation. But also maybe things like pretending a block is a car, or pretending lots of blocks are a building, that sort of thing. The next 3 is where it starts to get really tricky. So complex pretend play is linking those pretend play actions together to tell an extended story. Imaginary role play is taking on those imaginary roles. So maybe they're a doctor, maybe they're a superhero, but typically kind of playing by themselves. And then sociodramatic play is telling an extended story, including imaginary roles with others. So you can see how that requires a lot of language, a lot of social skills, and how kind of play, communication, and social skills are all linked and are building blocks. So this is the assessment we came up with. So this is actually the same child that we discussed for the EFL assessment. And what we have here is kind of, we've got the play stages and the social stages, and then we've got the different observation periods going vertically. So again, blue is baseline. This was a little bit after he joined the service. So it was kind of when we first developed this assessment. So you can see in the baseline, he had exploratory play, combinatorial play, cause and effect play, and functional play. And most of his play was functional. So we are kind of assessing what we've observed. So all the different stages that we've observed, but then we're also assessing which one is their most common at that time. Because even though they may have been seen to engage in some stages, actually it might be that it's only 1 or 2 times, or it's supported by adults. So the kind of current, their current play stage tells us a lot about where they are. You can also see, so between assessment 1 and 2 here is when lockdown happened. And again, you can see how those gains in communication made at home led to some pretend play starting to come out. And in the social category, it led to some parallel play and some associate play, which is also great because he probably wasn't having many opportunities for that during the pandemic. Again, you can see how they've built. So he's now been able to engage in all social stages. However, imaginary role play and sociodramatic play are still yet to develop. So you can see he's obviously taken on different stages of play, but he has also moved up in terms of what his most common category is. So yes, the assessment we've designed, it's not perfect, but it does allow for that rapid visual analysis. It's super quick to complete. It's mostly observational based, and it allows staff and parents to focus on play. So I'll do a training with the staff and with the parents on the different stages of play and how they can promote movement between the different levels, and how they can kind of, we can brainstorm activities that might promote that type of play that we're looking to develop. So that the parents are becoming confident in picking play that's appropriate to their level, rather than picking toys that actually right now are a bit too hard for them and we need to build the foundation. And obviously, because it's through play, we're incorporating children's choice into the activities. Okay, we're going to move on to target setting. So as we discussed briefly before, a combination of the assessment, observations, and discussion with parents leads to target setting. So each family has around 3 to 5 targets, and they typically focus on the most functional and the most socially significant skills. So both parents and children are set targets. So if the child, for example, has a target to communicate using PECS, then the parent will have a target around creating opportunities and prompting that child to use PECS. We typically have quite general targets. So we're teaching parents the skills to be able to generalize and extend it at home. So rather than saying we're putting on skill acquisition for PECS, biscuit, iPad, and ball, we'll say that we're putting on PECS, and then we're supporting the parent to be able to look at the child's motivation, work out what pictures they need and what they can do at home to promote that communication. So some examples of targets that we have. every single child has a communication target. Obviously, it's a super important area. And when a child comes to us who's pre-verbal, we'll do an assessment and work out what is the most appropriate communication method for them at that moment in time. So you can see here, that's the learner's mum using PECS with the learner. And often what we found is that a lot of families have been told to use PECS. So their speech and language therapist has said, yeah, use PECS, but actually they don't know how to do it. So it's really helpful for the parents to have that breakdown and to see actually how you move through the different stages, how you can drive motivation, how you confirm this motivation, how you can prompt, how you can kind of promote vocalizations as well. So yeah. Behaviours that challenge, a lot of children will have targets around that. And obviously that's making sure that the parents are then able to, contrive situations to tell them no, offer them alternatives, increase the time that they can wait and work on these functionally rather than just waiting for these situations to kind of present themselves. And then self-help skills, we do a lot of work around tolerating skills. So you can see I'm not a hairdresser, but I'm working with this parent, showing her how we can build up gradually the tolerance to hair cutting. So kind of using in a combination of graduated exposure and positive reinforcement, and then getting the parent to jump in and have a go. We also, at the moment, one of our parents is a barber, so he's hopefully coming in after half term, so we can extend that further. We then might have play skills on as targets, so moving through the different play skill stages that we just talked about. Maybe choice making could be a target. Social skills, so things like turn taking, or increasing those social repertoires, moving through the phases. Pre-learning skills, so things like imitation or matching. Receptive language skills, so again, those functional things, following instructions, safety skills. We'll often take parents out into the community, go for walks with them, and we'll have a trip at the end of every term where, again, we can focus on the parents feeling confident to take them out. And then some school readiness skills, so things like group skills and listening and attention. So you can see in that photo, the teacher is running the session, but the parent is there supporting the child where they need to. And obviously, if they don't need to, they're stepping back. So kind of generally anything within reason can be a target, as everything's individualized to the parent and child. Behavior skills training is what we use throughout the session to model the skills to parents, to provide instructions and coach the parents, getting the parents involved, letting them have a go, having an opportunity for rehearsal, providing feedback, and repeating across a range of different situations. So in this photo, we've got the dad, we've got a tutor, and we've got me. So the tutor is providing instructions to the dad on how to do something. And the focus really is on empowering the parents and getting them involved as much as possible. And then over time, fading the amount of support that we need to give them. So data taking, again, due to the setup of the session, we needed adapted data taking. So tutors are working with 2 families at a time, and trial by trial data is really, really hard to gain accurately. We trialed the parents taking data, but what we found was that the parents actually became so focused on that and stressed about doing it right that it actually took away from what they were doing with the child. So that's not the important thing. They don't need to know how to take data, but they do need to know how to interact with their child and focus on skills building. So we have got a lot of simplified data taking. We've got a mixture of quantitative and qualitative session notes. and then some visual analysis using Excel. So we've got here some adapted ABC data, so tally data with reduced categories for time, because once again, the tutor's not always there with their timer being able to start and stop at the right time. But it allows us to track and see whether their behaviours are generally reducing in time or increasing in time. It also allows us to see whether there's a change in topographies, whether they were previously engaging in, aggressive behaviours or self-injurious behaviours, whereas now it's more whining or crying, which might be typical of their age. And then some adaptive manding data. So again, tally data with some examples so that we can pull out and see what is going on and whether there is an improvement or whether we need to put any adaptations into their programs. All children have a double-sided data sheet, so it looks similar to this. So we've got space for their individual targets down the side. So the child's targets are in blue and the parents' targets are in black. We've got some space for qualitative notes and some options for kind of prompted independent tally data, whatever's appropriate to the target. And then at the end of the session, we rate with the parents how well the child did with that target. So we use a RAG rating. So red would be mostly prompted, amber would be kind of 50-50, green mostly independent, and then green plus would be perfect, 100%. And then the parents also rate how confident they felt. So on a scale of 1 to 5, how they feel running that target. So hopefully we can see the parents' confidence level going up and then that translating to an increase in the child's competence with that target. Again, it is slightly subjective, but it allows that consistency and that visual track of progress. We can then see, so at the bottom, that's where we'd put the RAG rating on Excel. So we use a lot of conditional formatting so that data input is super quick, putting it in and it just kind of does it for you. So the bottom one is the targets. So we can see that the child moves through and is mastering targets, and then that the second target is moving from red to green plus to green back to amber. So there's a bit of variability in it. So again, it allows us to be able to quickly pick up any flat lines, quickly pick up any master targets, and we're kind of constantly reviewing the targets on a rolling basis. Top right is some manding data. And again, that conditional formatting allows us to see that it's moving from kind of mostly prompted through to mostly independent. And obviously, if it wasn't doing that, then we're able to go in and see what's going on. Again, Excel is set up to automatically graph. So we have that visual analysis that's ongoing. We've got manding in the top two. So different levels of prompting and different levels of independence that we're tracking. And then bottom left, we have behavior frequency. And again, we often graph by antecedent as well, because it's all automatically set up to do that. And then bottom right is the time that they have spent in bucket time. Finally, the last piece of the puzzle is report writing. So we share a termly summary with parents. So it looks similar to bottom right. So some photos and a short snapshot about what the parents have been doing and how that has led to progress with the children. So really kind of celebrating them and their child's achievements and giving them strategies to continue with at home. And then we do a lot of work supporting parents with the EHCP reports and EHCP applications because due to their age, a lot of these are ongoing. So let me just check time. Okay. That kind of brings us to the end. So tying in together with the overarching theme, of the conference, whose decision is it anyway? Hopefully it's clear that we're trying to empower the parents to be confident in their decision making, to make decisions in the best interest of their young children. But we also want to focus on encouraging the parents to promote decision making and choice making from a young age, so that the children can, make those decisions where they're able to. And we do this through upskilling the parents, focusing on play skills, and communication as the foundation and the building blocks for developing choice and independence in later life. Just going to flick through some reference pages, and yeah, thank you for listening.
Thank you for that, Sarah. That was fantastic, and possibly the most perfect timekeeping we've had to date. So well done. I'm just organising the last comment because there have been many. Let me just grab that one. Make sure I go through them all. Oh my goodness! Right, you'll understand why I'm a bit hectic at this point. Right, here we go. So, so lots and lots of questions, lots of comments. So I'm just going to take them from the top because I feel like otherwise I can't really organise them any other way. Russell asked, how can we better program generalisation of choice and control in relation to... oh, that's from the last one. I'm so sorry. Right. Bobby, thank you very much for the informative discussion. It's also from the last one. Oh, my goodness. Okay, here we go. I've got it right this time. So Jane mentions that autism and learning disability early intervention is a total black hole in this country. And it's not got any better since the 19 years that her boy was in early years. Maria commented that in Cyprus, we are lately starting to be much more aware of the problem, I think, of early diagnosis. And we do have some diagnosis to be done as early as 18 months, but it's private. And then Jane also sort of commented how everything had to be private for them as well. And how, again, reflecting, as you'll see from the other comments, how well received your work is in delegates alone. Maria asks if you've got any examples of the areas of skills you're assessing, but I think maybe that question came early and you kind of covered that through how you went about your checklists. And this question, do you provide any interventions at home?
Sorry, say that again.
Do you provide any interventions in the home?
No, not currently. So yeah, we predominantly work with the families in the service, but we try and invite in as many people that are involved in that child's life as possible. So parents, grandparents, aunties, nursery assistants, their one-to-ones, au pairs, etc. Just kind of due to time constraints and the fact that we are there in the service with 6 families at a time, it's really hard to do stuff in the home, but we'll often, if there's something coming up as an issue. So this week I was working on tolerating hairbrushing with the child, went perfectly in the session. The mum then brought in her hairbrush from home, went perfectly in the session. And she was then kind of getting really frustrated because obviously at home it's not going perfectly. So I've got her to film it so that I can see what's going on. So kind of helping what we can there.
I see. Great. How do you ensure parents aren't overloaded? This is a question from Jane. She can remember sheer exhaustion at an early age.
Yeah, and we're really kind of careful of that because I think, yeah, as Jane can relate to, it's a really tough time for parents. A lot of parents are really vulnerable. They're just going through the process of diagnosis, whether that feels like a grieving process to them. And, they've got lots of things. They've got lots of stuff coming at all angles. So that's why we're getting the parents involved in the target setting to make sure that they're happy to commit to those targets. And we really try and focus on how we can use behavior principles to underpin what they're doing. So it's not, they've got to do a DTT session at home and they've got to fit in 3 hours of X, Y, and Z. It's how can they make little tweaks in their daily life to create those opportunities for communication that are happening naturally, or to, focus on things that are going on. They're going to be brushing their child's teeth every day. They're going to be brushing their child's hair every day. How can we make those situations easier for them? And obviously every family has 3 to 5 targets at a time. So there's going to be far more things that they're going to need to work on, but we're focusing just on prioritizing. And then we also have, in the parent discussion sessions, there's some ones on parent mental health and sharing strategies for that, and promoting the parents' well-being as well.
It's interesting because I'm sitting here watching this presentation knowing about this service, and because you've condensed it into these 50 minutes, it really strikes me how far-reaching it is. And actually a lot of the reflections here have been on that note. So Jane again talks about how much more useful it was than the early bird service that she accessed when it was on offer. Patricia asks, just compliments you on the presentation, and also asks, is there any parent groups that you're aware of that parents who did not attend early years service are able to join?
So in Bromley, there are some other services available that I know of that a lot of other parents attend. I don't know if she's referring to early years or if she's referring to parents of older children. But I'm guessing with the older children, I think, there's a lack of those groups, and there's a lack of that service at the moment. But that would be something great that could be developed.
Yeah, well, I agreed, and it will come on to development in a minute, I think. So do you, Russell asked, do you feel the outcomes of parents have impacted on their perception of behaviour analysis and its role in the child's lives going forward?
Absolutely, yeah. I think a lot of parents, when they first come, can be quite sceptical of behaviour analysis. I mean, if you Google it, you get all of the controversial opinions coming up and everything happening. And we've had, some parents kind of comment on the fact that it's totally different to what they thought it was going to be. And then a lot of our parents actually come from parent recommendations. So they're kind of sharing the service with others. So I think it hopefully kind of helps demystify some of those myths.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's worth knowing, actually, I know you've had a particular angle on this in terms of assessment and data and so on, but when in the actual services, it's just a lot of fun for the kids. And a lot of this is around decision making in the background. Okay, Aisha asked about the plain social skill assessment being shared. For anyone who's asked that type of question, David put the contact details, which is the same as yesterday, for research and learning. If you reach out to that email address, and we can pick up those conversations there. There were some really interesting comments here. One actually, which speaks to a service that I know you're trying to develop, from Georgios, around, is there any structured transition to schools?
So yes, we try to as much as possible. It really depends on the engagement from the parents and the engagement from the schools. So we've had some children that have come to our earlier service and then may have gone away for a bit and have come back to our preschool service right now. And then we have joined transition meetings for them going to primary school, etc. We, again, if they're in earlier service and aren't ready for the preschool group, but they're going to school, we try and join transition meetings where we can, try and invite people from their new school in. A lot of it is down to time constraints from the school and from ourselves. But we've got some key families that we're still in contact with, and they're at school, and parents will kind of liaise with us and know that we understand their child at the level that they want to try and portray to the school. So
these are some of the mechanisms that we battle with, isn't it? Like you mentioned really early on in your presentation about the non-statutory aspect of this. And I suppose in that way it might, not being too technical, but to have it manifest in an education healthcare plan, for example, given the diagnostic lag and possible even agreement to assessment, is something that then almost takes away the opportunity for early years to be involved. David has posted the school readiness group information just for those that are interested. And then just to finish, there's been a couple of really interesting comments around how much more effective this sounds like it is, and really some of the service that everybody should know about. So Virginia started off by sort of agreeing with Jane around the early bird piece, and she was thinking, she sort of commented, she's so glad to think this model might be disseminated, but then also later talks about how has this been costed as a model? And the short answer to that, Virginia, is yes. We know painfully how much it costs because we're so restricted by the voluntary income that comes in to pay for it. So I think we'd be very happy to hear from you, either emailing myself or via the research and learning email to have a conversation about that. Could really appreciate your support in that area. Okay, Sarah, thank you so much for your talk. I knew this would be super engaging for people. I think it really just matches the zeitgeist of the SEND review in terms of early years. And more than that, I think the level of detail that you and the team take forward in being concerned for the welfare and the well-being and developing a choice and autonomy in children that young, and thinking about all the other things that we've spoken about moving through to adulthood and so on. I think this is a vital service. Thank you so much. And any other questions, please forward them through whenever you like, and we can get them over to Sarah and her team as and when.